beloved soul, there is a sacred longing within you, a silent call that no worldly achievement can satisfy. That longing is your soul remembering its origin. It is the whisper of the infinite, inviting you back into divine communion. To fill yourself with God through prayer is not merely to speak words, it is to dissolve the boundaries that separate you from the divine presence already within you. Prayer begins not with the lips, but with stillness. When the restless waves of thought begin to settle, when the noise of the world fades into the background, you will discover a quiet space within your heart. Enter that space daily. Sit there, not as a beggar asking for favors, but as a child returning home. Do not rush your prayers. Let them flow like a gentle river of devotion. Speak to God as you would to your closest friend, honestly, openly, without fear. Tell Him your struggles, your doubts, your desires, but above all, offer your love. For it is love that draws the divine nearer. Words repeated without feeling are like empty shells. But one single heartfelt call, Lord, I seek you, can pierce through the veil of illusion and bring you into His presence. Make your prayer alive. Feel every word. Let it vibrate through your being. Close your eyes and imagine that the divine is listening, because He is. In that sacred moment, forget the world. Forget your worries. Become absorbed in that connection. And then listen. Prayer is not only speaking, it is also receiving. After you have poured your heart out, sit in silence. In that silence, subtle peace will begin to arise. That peace is the first answer to your prayer. That stillness is God touching your soul. Practice this daily, not once in a while, not only in times of trouble, but every day. Like a flame that must be protected from the wind, your connection with God must be nurtured with consistency. Carry your prayer beyond meditation. Let your actions become a prayer. Let your kindness, your patience, your forgiveness become offerings to the divine. When you walk, walk with awareness of His presence. When you speak, speak with love. When you work, work as if serving Him. In time, you will no longer feel separate. You will realize that prayer is not something you do, it is something you become. Your heart will remain inwardly connected even in the midst of worldly activity. And then one day you will discover a profound truth, that the God you were seeking through prayer was quietly residing within you all along. Fill yourself with Him, not through force, but through love, not through fear, but through devotion, not through ritual alone, but through living awareness. Then your life itself will become a continuous, unbroken prayer. And in that prayer, you will find eternal peace. Inner silence is not merely the absence of noise, it is a sacred state of awareness where the restless movements of the mind begin to dissolve, revealing a deeper, eternal presence within. Most people attempt to pray while their thoughts are scattered, pulled in countless directions by worries, desires, and memories. In such a condition, prayer becomes mechanical, lacking the depth needed to touch the divine. The gateway to true communion with God opens only when this inner turbulence is calm, when the surface of consciousness becomes still, like a quiet lake reflecting the infinite sky. The mind, by its nature, is constantly active. It jumps from one thought to another, creating an endless stream of distractions. This restlessness forms a barrier between the soul and the divine presence. To enter into meaningful prayer, one must first learn to gently withdraw attention from this chaos. This does not require force or suppression, but a gradual turning inward. As you close your eyes and sit in stillness, begin to observe your thoughts without attachment. Let them pass like clouds drifting across the sky. Do not chase them and do not resist them. In this simple act of witnessing, the mind slowly loses its grip and a subtle calm begins to emerge. As silence deepens, a shift occurs within your awareness. You move from being entangled in thoughts to becoming the observer of them. This transition is the beginning of inner awakening. In that quiet space, you are no longer identified with your worries or fears. Instead, you begin to feel a gentle sense of peace that does not depend on external circumstances. This peace is not created, it is revealed. It has always been present beneath the noise, waiting for your attention to return to it. Inner silence also refines your ability to feel. When the mind is loud, it drowns out the subtle voice of the soul. But in stillness, your sensitivity increases. You begin to experience prayer not just as words, but as a living energy flowing from your heart. Your devotion becomes more concentrated, more sincere. Even a single thought directed toward God in this state carries immense power because it arises from a place of clarity and presence. This silence is not empty, it is full of quiet awareness. It is in this sacred stillness that the divine presence becomes perceptible, not through visions or dramatic experiences, but through a deep, unshakable sense of connection. You may feel a warmth in your heart, a gentle expansion of your being, or a profound calm that surpasses all understanding. These are subtle signs that you are approaching the inner sanctuary where true prayer takes place. The practice of cultivating inner silence requires patience and consistency. In the beginning, the mind may resist. It may become even more restless when you try to quiet it. This is natural. The key is not to become frustrated, but remain steady in your effort. Each time you return your attention inward, you are strengthening your ability to enter this silent space. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes natural, and the silence begins to reveal itself more easily. Breath can serve as a gentle anchor in this process. By focusing on the natural rhythm of your breathing, you give the mind a point of stillness to rest upon. As the breath slows and deepens, the mind follows. Gradually, both breath and thought become quieter, leading you deeper into inner stillness. In that state, prayer ceases to be something you do and becomes something that naturally arises from your being. As you grow familiar with inner silence, you will notice that it begins to extend beyond your moments of meditation. Even in the midst of daily activity, a part of you remains calm and centered. This ongoing awareness transforms your relationship with prayer. You no longer need to wait for a specific time or place to connect with God. The gateway is always within you, accessible at any moment through the simple act of turning inward and entering the silence where the divine eternally resides. Devotion is the silent language of the soul, far more powerful than any spoken word. Many people believe that prayer is defined by the number of words they recite or the perfection of their expressions. But true prayer is not measured by eloquence. It is measured by the depth of feeling behind it. Words are only vessels. Without devotion, they are empty. But when the heart is filled with sincere longing, even the simplest call becomes a powerful bridge between the soul and the divine. There is a natural tendency to rely on memorized prayers, repeating them day after day without truly entering into their meaning. The lips move, the phrases are spoken, but the heart remains distant. In such moments, prayer becomes a habit rather than an experience. Devotion transforms this habit into a living connection. It awakens the inner energy of love and directs it toward the divine with intensity and purity. This love is not something that can be forced. It must be felt, nurtured, and allowed to grow through awareness and sincerity. When devotion arises, it brings with it a sense of intimacy. God is no longer perceived as distant or abstract, but as a living presence that listens, understands, and responds. In that state, prayer becomes a conversation of the heart. You are no longer concerned with saying the right words. Instead, you are focused on expressing your true feelings, your gratitude, your struggles, your yearning for guidance. This authenticity creates a powerful resonance, drawing you closer to the divine presence. Emotion plays a central role in this process, but it must be refined. Devotion is not mere emotional excitement or temporary enthusiasm. It is a steady, deep feeling of love and reverence that comes from the soul. It is calm yet intense, gentle yet unwavering. This kind of devotion does not fluctuate with circumstances. Whether in joy or difficulty, it remains constant, anchoring your awareness in a higher reality. To cultivate such devotion, one must learn to internalize prayer. Instead of focusing outwardly on rituals or external forms, bring your attention inward. Feel the presence of God within your heart. Imagine that you are sitting before the divine, not physically, but in a subtle inner sense. Speak from that place. Let your words arise naturally, guided by your feeling. Even if you repeat a single phrase, let it be filled with meaning. Let every repetition deepen your connection rather than dull it. Silence can enhance devotion. When words fade, feeling becomes more pronounced. In those quiet moments, your heart continues to speak without language. There is a silent offering of love a gentle surrender of the self into something greater. This silent devotion often carries more power than long verbal prayers because it is free from distraction and rooted in pure awareness. Another important aspect of devotion is sincerity. It requires honesty with oneself and with the divine. There is no need to hide imperfections or pretend to be spiritually advanced. True devotion embraces vulnerability. It allows you to come as you are with all your strengths and weaknesses and offer them without reservation. This openness creates a channel through which div in grace can flow more freely. As devotion deepens, it begins to influence every aspect of your being. Your thoughts become more centered, your actions more mindful, your intentions more aligned with higher values. Prayer is no longer confined to a specific time or practice. It becomes a continuous undercurrent in your life, a quiet remembrance of the divine presence that accompanies you in all situations. In this state, even ordinary activities can become expressions of devotion, a kind word, a patient response, a moment of gratitude. These become silent prayers. The distinction between prayer and life begins to dissolve, and devotion becomes a way of being rather than something you occasionally practice. Consistency is the quiet force that transforms a fleeting spiritual effort into a living, unbreakable connection with the divine. Many approach prayer with enthusiasm in moments of need or inspiration, but when that intensity fades, the practice is often abandoned or neglected. This irregular approach prevents the deepening of spiritual awareness because true connection is not built through occasional effort but through steady, devoted practice over time. Just as a seed requires daily nourishment to grow into a strong tree, the soul's relationship with God requires constant attention and care. Each time you turn inward in prayer, you are creating a subtle impression within your consciousness. These impressions, though not always immediately visible, accumulate gradually. At first, the changes may seem small, perhaps a slight sense of peace, a brief moment of clarity, but with consistency, these moments begin to expand. What was once rare becomes frequent, and what was once fleeting becomes stable. This is the power of repeated, sincere effort. It builds a foundation upon which deeper spiritual experiences can arise naturally. The mind resists discipline. It seeks comfort in routine habits that require little awareness, and it often finds excuses to avoid the stillness of prayer. Some days it may say, I am too busy, and on others, I do not feel like it. If you follow these impulses, your practice will remain inconsistent and the connection you seek will remain distant. Consistency requires a gentle firmness, a commitment that does not depend on mood or circumstance. It is the decision to show up each day regardless of how you feel and offer your time and attention to the divine. There is a sacred rhythm that develops when prayer becomes a daily practice. Just as the body becomes accustomed to regular habits, the mind and heart begin to anticipate these moments of stillness. Over time, entering into prayer becomes easier. The mind settles more quickly The heart opens more naturally and the sense of connection deepens without effort. This rhythm creates a spiritual momentum that carries you forward, making each session of prayer more meaningful than the last. Consistency also strengthens your awareness of the divine presence beyond formal prayer. When you connect with God daily, even briefly, you begin to carry that awareness into your daily life. The boundary between prayer and activity starts to fade. You may find yourself pausing in the middle of a busy moment, remembering that quiet connection within. A simple breath, a brief inward turning becomes enough to reawaken that presence. This continuity transforms prayer from an isolated act into an ongoing relationship. There will be times when your practice feels dry or mechanical. The mind may wander, the heart may feel distant, and you may question whether your efforts are making any difference. These moments are part of the journey. They are not signs of failure, but opportunities to deepen your commitment. When you continue despite these challenges, you are strengthening and your inner discipline and demonstrating sincerity in your seeking. It is in these periods of apparent stillness that the roots of your connection are growing the deepest. Patience is essential in this process. Spiritual growth does not follow the expectations of the restless mind. It unfolds in its own time, guided by your sincerity and persistence. By maintaining consistency, you create the conditions for this growth to occur. You are, in a sense, preparing the inner ground, making it receptive to the presence of the divine. Even a few minutes of daily focused prayer can be more powerful than long, irregular sessions. What matters is not the duration, but the regularity and the quality of your attention. When you return to the same inner space each day, you begin to recognize it more clearly. It becomes familiar, like a sacred home within you that you can enter at will. As this practice deepens, the sense of separation begins to dissolve. The connection you are building no longer feels like something you must create. It feels like something that is always there, waiting to be acknowledged. Through consistency, you train your awareness to recognize this presence more readily until it becomes a natural and enduring part of your experience. Heartfelt sincerity is the essence of true prayer, the invisible thread that connects the human soul to the divine presence. It is not something that can be imitated or artificially created. It arises naturally when one is willing to be completely honest within. Many approach prayer with a sense of formality, trying to say the right things or follow a structured pattern. But sincerity asks for something deeper. It asks for truth. It asks you to come before the divine without masks, without pretense, and without the need to appear perfect. There is a quiet power in authenticity. When you speak from a place of genuine feeling, your prayer carries a vibration that goes beyond words. It is no longer a mental exercise, but a living expression of your inner state. Whether you are filled with gratitude, confusion, longing, or even pain, sincerity allows you to offer it all without hesitation. Nothing needs to be hidden. In fact, The very act of revealing your true self becomes the doorway through which deeper connection is established. People hesitate to be fully sincere because they feel unworthy or fear judgment. They believe they must purify themselves before approaching the divine, as if perfection is a requirement for acceptance. But sincerity dissolves this illusion. It recognizes that the divine already knows every thought, every weakness, and every desire. There is no need to conceal anything. When you come with openness, you are not exposing yourself to judgment, you are aligning yourself with truth. And in that alignment, a natural sense of peace begins to arise. Sincerity also brings simplicity to prayer. It removes the need for complexity or elaborate expressions. A single honest sentence spoken with full awareness can carry more depth than a long memorized recitation. Even silence, when filled with genuine feeling, becomes a powerful form of communication. In that silence, your heart speaks directly without the limitations of language. It is a subtle exchange where what is felt becomes more important than what is said. To cultivate heartfelt sincerity, one must first develop self awareness. This means observing your own thoughts and emotions without judgment. When you understand what you truly feel, you can express it more clearly in prayer. If you are troubled, acknowledge it. If you are grateful, feel it deeply. If you are searching, admit your longing. This honesty creates a foundation upon which sincerity can grow. It transforms prayer from a routine practice into a genuine encounter with the divine. There is also a sense of humility that accompanies sincerity. Not a humility born of weakness, but one that arises from recognizing the vastness of the divine and the limitations of the ego. In this humility, you naturally surrender the need to control or impress. You simply offer yourself as you are. This surrender softens the heart and makes it more receptive to divine influence. It allows you to listen as much as you speak, to feel as much as you express. Sincerity has a refining effect on the inner life. As you practice being honest in prayer, you begin to carry that honesty into other areas of your existence. Your thoughts become clearer, your intentions more genuine, and your actions more aligned with your deeper values. This integration strengthens your connection with the divine because you are no longer divided within yourself. What you feel, what you think, and what you express begin to move in harmony. In moments of deep sincerity, there is often a subtle shift in awareness. The distance between you and the divine seems to lessen, not because something external has changed, but because the barriers within you have been removed. The heart opens, and in that openness, there is a quiet recognition of presence, a sense that you are heard, understood, and gently supported. This kind of prayer does not depend on time, place, or circumstance. It can arrive anywhere at any moment because sincerity is not bound by external conditions. It is a quality of being, a state of inner truthfulness that transforms even the simplest act of remembrance into a profound spiritual experience. To become the prayer is to move beyond the idea that prayer is something you occasionally do, and to realize that it is something you can continuously be. At first, prayer feels like a separate act, a moment set aside where you close your eyes, withdraw from the world, and speak to the divine. But as your awareness deepens, a subtle transformation begins to take place. The boundary between prayer and life starts to dissolve, and what was once an activity becomes a state of being. In the beginning, you may rely on words, gestures, or specific practices to feel connected. These are valuable, for they help focus your attention and awaken your inner longing. But they are only the doorway. As you step further within, you begin to sense that the essence of prayer is not in the outer form but in the inner attitude. It is a continuous remembrance, a quiet awareness of the divine presence that remains with you regardless of what you are doing. To become the prayer means to carry that awareness into every moment. It is to live with a subtle feeling that you are never separate, that every thought, every action, every breath can be offered inwardly. This does not require withdrawal from the world or abandoning your responsibilities. Rather, it invites you to transform your relationship with them. The ordinary activities of life, walking, speaking, working, become infused with a deeper significance when they are performed with this awareness. Your thoughts begin to reflect this inner connection. Instead of being scattered or reactive, they become more deliberate, more aligned with the sense of peace and purpose. When a thought arises, you observe it with greater clarity, choosing whether it contributes to your inner stillness or disturbs it. In this way, your mind itself becomes a sacred space where only those thoughts that uplift and harmonize are allowed to remain. This conscious awareness is a silent form of prayer, one that continues even without words. Your actions also begin to change. When you act with the awareness that you are offering everything to the divine, even the smallest gesture gains depth. A kind word becomes more than politeness, as it becomes an expression of love. A moment of patience becomes an act of surrender. A task performed with care becomes a form of devotion. In this way, your daily life is no longer separate from your spiritual practice. It becomes the very field in which your connection with the divine is expressed and strengthened. There is also a growing sense of presence that accompanies this state. You begin to feel more anchored in the present moment, less pulled by regrets of the past or anxieties about the future. This presence is not forced, it arises naturally from your inward connection. When you are aware of the divine within, your attention settles into the now, because that is where this connection is most deeply felt. Each moment becomes an opportunity to remain aligned, to stay inwardly connected. As this awareness deepens, a quiet joy begins to emerge. It is not dependent on external circumstances, but arises from the simple fact of being connected. Even in the midst of challenges, there is a subtle strength, a calm assurance that you are not alone. This inner stability allows you to move through life with greater ease, responding rather than reacting, acting with intention rather than impulse. Becoming the prayer also involves a gentle surrender of the ego. The need to control, to prove, to seek constant validation begins to fade as you rest more deeply in your inner connection. You start to recognize that you are not the sole doer of your actions, but an instrument through which a higher presence can express itself. This realization brings humility, but also freedom, a release from the constant pressure of self centered striving. In this state, prayer is no longer confined to moments of silence or specific practices. It flows continuously like an undercurrent beneath all your experiences. Whether you are speaking or silent, active or still, there is a part of you, T, hat, remains inwardly connected, gently aware, quietly devoted. This ongoing connection transforms your entire life into a sacred expression where every moment carries the essence of prayer and every breath becomes a silent offering.